Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Frank Mularcik, and in this video we're going to be looking at charts in Google Sheets and how you can actually use Google Apps scripts to actually edit your charts, within a script, and sort of automate some of that stuff. So this is something that's pretty cool I discovered within the past few months. So basically I can show you here what I am doing in my spreadsheet is I'm taking my portfolio value, dividend income, and dividend yield, and I'm basically logging them every single day. As you can see here, we have a log going back to around February timeframe, the past few months, and then what I can do is I can kind of chart these different values over time to kind of visualize that, the dividend income, dividend yield, and portfolio value. But the interesting thing is, if we look at these charts here, we can see, if it loads, there we go, we can see the data range right here is A1 to D46, and as it turns out 46 is the last row I have in here. And so I've had problems in the past with sort of setting a certain data range for charts, and then when the data in that range is changing within its size, that can mess stuff up. And thinking long term, I guess, if we're putting something in here every single day, our sheet at this point only has 988 rows, and for reasons I won't get into right now, that number of rows is actually going to decrease over time as our script runs, because we're going to be deleting some rows. So the point is, eventually, theoretically, we would get to the bottom of this, and then we would keep adding rows. And if we're adding rows, if we just set the initial range for the chart to go all the way to the bottom of the sheet, then when we add rows, that data isn't going to get added in. So we need to kind of dynamically update the range of the chart, and so that's kind of what we can do. And I'll show you kind of the documentation from Google, and then we can go into my script and show how I'm doing it. So basically it's an embedded chart object, which is a chart within a spreadsheet. So if you already have a chart in the spreadsheet, then you can get it. So you just create a sheet variable that represents your sheet, and then you can use the sheet.getCharts function here, and that's just going to get all the charts available. And then you can look at the indexes or names or whatever to figure out which ones you want to modify. And then you just, whenever you want to modify it, you just set chart equal to chart.modify. And then you can do all these other functions like add range, set position, set option, stuff like that. And then the last thing you have to do is this build function right here, which sort of, I guess, like compiles it. Maybe that's probably not the right explanation, but that's how I think about it. It sort of like compiles it all together into an actual chart. And then the last thing you have to do is use this sheet.updateChart function and pass that specific chart into it to actually like update it into the sheet for the user to see. And then you can also actually create a new chart if you just do sheet.newChart, and then you can kind of do the same thing. And then actually you have to use this chart builder type thing, which I guess is just a different name for the chart object, I guess. So you can just add the range and set the type and options again, and then instead of using the update chart function, since it's not in the spreadsheet yet, you have to insert it, and again you have to build it. So that's just kind of the basics from the documentation. Obviously there's some other functions here that they kind of go over, but that's sort of all I needed to look at to figure out what I needed to do for this. So if we go into my script here, we can see this is basically within this record data function, and then at the end of that function, I'm just going to call this update charts function, and I'm going to pass it the sheet that the charts are in, and then the row that is basically the last row of data that we want to encapsulate in our chart. And then what that function can do down here, as we can see, we're just going to make a charts variable. So use the sheet.getCharts function. So now this is a sort of like an array or a list of all the different charts in that specific spreadsheet. So in this case, it's just on the specific sheet. So we're looking at this value over time sheet here. So it's just going to give us an array of these 3 charts. And then what we can do is we just do a for loop on those charts for each of those charts basically. And then what we want to do is set a range. So we're going to create a range which goes from starts in row 1, and it's going to go to the date column, which is basically starting in this column. So row 1, column 1 is where it starts, and then the number of rows that it's going to do is basically just the row variable, and then the number of columns it's going to be over is this, 4 columns, because we have these 4 columns here. So hopefully that makes sense. And then we're just going to get the specific chart by indexing the array, and then we're going to do a similar function. So we're going to do chart.modify, and then we're going to clear the ranges, which is sort of something I found that worked to the best, I guess, and was most consistent. Is first you basically clear the range, so there's no data in there, and then you add the range of the full range that you want to look at the data of, and then you build it, and then you just do sheet.update chart for that chart. And then it's going to basically do that for all 3 of those charts in that spreadsheet because of the for loop. So what we can actually do is I will basically set a breakpoint maybe right here, so we can see some of the stuff, and then we're just going to debug this record data function, so we can basically see what's happening. So we'll just wait a little bit. It shouldn't take too long to get there. Yeah, so we're here, and so we're going for row 47. Then we have this array of charts, which can't really see much info about those charts, but there's 3 of them. And then so if we go into the next breakpoint, our range is basically, I don't know if we can look at the range very well. I guess not. We can't really look at the range very well, but basically it's going to be from row 1 to row 47, and then column 1 to column 4, which is kind of what we have defined here. And then if we sort of modify it, we can remember that all the charts went from A1 basically to D46. So at this point, it should hopefully go to D47. And we're just going to resume and get out of that breakpoint, so we're not going to break anymore. And we finish running the function. So if we go back here, we can see obviously we had a new piece of data entered here into the 47th row here. And then if we look at these charts, sometimes it's kind of annoying to bring it up. If we look at the charts here, we can see now the row or the data range goes all the way to D47, which is pretty cool that you can dynamically update the range like that. So that's kind of how I'm using Google Apps script to update charts and kind of modify them within the script. And to me, that's a really neat feature, because sometimes you need to change some things about your chart. For me, it makes most sense to change, obviously the range that you're looking over once you have it set up, and your range is changing dynamically with your script. So that makes sense to me. Obviously, if you have some sort of interface that people are using, you could kind of make it easier to create a chart for them, something like that maybe. So I think there's a lot of potential kind of with this ability, and I think it's a pretty cool feature. So let me know if you do have any questions about it in the comments down below, and I just want to thank everyone for sticking around to the end of the video, and I'll see you in the next one.